Well, the circus sometimes come to town. I've been thinking about circuses. It comes to the Scott Ellis playing fields, in fact, which are not far from here, and it was here in Kilmarnock in May. Perhaps you went. Did anyone go? It's a great way to spend a few hours, it really is. And it's a very old thing. It goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, 2,500 years ago. I looked at all this. It was big in ancient Greece, big in ancient Rome. Think of the chariot races and the gladiators, mock battles, jugglers and acrobats, the Roman emperor in his purple robes passing life and death judgments. The Circus Maximus in Rome was in use for a whopping 1,000 years. And it was from places like that that our modern circus comes. It turned eventually into entertainers traveling the land and putting up their big tent in towns and villages, in marketplaces and fairs and in noblemen's halls. In 1066, William the Conqueror brought his circus over from France. Napoleon and the Russian emperor had circuses, and they became a very big deal in America. So they've been around for a very long time. And I've always found them fascinating. I was thinking about circuses because I read a very interesting article recently. It was written by a circus trapeze artist. Let's have our trapeze artist. Yay. The one on the left, as it happens. Now, the relationship between the flyer in the air and the catcher on the trapeze is not all that it seems. Yes, the flyer is the one that has to let go and fly through the air. And the catcher is the one that catches them. And as you might imagine, this relationship is especially important to the flyer. When the flyer is swinging high above the crowd on the trapeze, the moment comes to let go and fly through the air. But the flyer must remain as still as possible in the air and wait for the strong hands of the catcher. The trapeze artist wrote in the article that the flyer must never try to catch the catcher. The flyer must wait in absolute trust for the catcher to catch them. And I thought this sounded very much like us, waiting for and trusting God. When we feel vulnerable or scared or despairing, we have to let go of what's causing those feelings and wait for God to catch us. And sadly, we don't seem to be very good at waiting. And we start flailing around, and this can stop God from catching us. In the same way that if the flying trapeze artist started flailing around, the catcher couldn't catch them cleanly, if at all, and they'd go tumbling to the ground. But if we take our worries to God and wait, we can be sure that God will catch us. When we take something to God in prayer, it may seem to us that God hasn't heard the prayer. But God knows more about our life events than we do, and his plans for us are perfect because he is perfect. So we can absolutely trust God's wisdom and timing and wait for God with confidence. He will catch us because he promised to. The Apostle Peter wrote, with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like one day. The Lord is not slow about his promises, as some think of slowness, but is patient with you. That's at 2 Peter. Now, in reading this, an economist, somebody who knows all about money, talked to God about it. He said, Lord, is it true that 1,000 years for us is like 1 minute to you? God said, yes. The economist said, well then, £1,000,000 to us might be like 1 penny to you. God said, well, yes. The economist said, will you please give me one of those pennies? And God said, yes, I will, in just a minute. Often we want God's help, but not God's timing. We want God's hand, but not God's calendar. We forget that God is working in us while we wait, and that's as important as what we're waiting for. Waiting means that we must trust God. Trust that he will catch us as we fly through life's adventures. Like the flying trapeze artist, we must be still and wait and trust for his strong hand. Amen.